The book of Leviticus. You cannot serve Jehovah, for he is a holy God. This is what Joshua had said among his last words to the nation before he left them at the age of 110. But the book of Leviticus is the book that tells us why that is so. When Yahweh first called Moses in Exodus chapter 3, the first instruction Moses received was do not come near. Draw your sandals off your feet, for the place where you're standing is holy ground. Yahweh made the rules. Even Moses could only approach God in the way God dictated. Yahweh had approached men, Adam, Cain, Abraham, Jacob, in many ways that Yahweh himself chose. But men can only approach God in the way he approves. Israel learned this through much tribulation. First, when Yahweh came down in fire on Sinai, Israel chose not to meet him at all. They sent Moses into the fire to mediate for them. Thus, unwittingly, Israel acknowledged the need of a mediator, a go-between who would speak to them for God and who would speak for them to God. But within weeks of saying before the smoking Sinai, all that Jehovah has spoken we are willing to do, they are returning in their hearts, if not their bodies, to Egypt. Thus again, unwittingly, Israel demonstrates for eternity that God can save a people who not only don't serve him, but can't serve him. For the power to obey the commandments of God is not something we can summon through our own efforts, no matter how willing we are, like Israel, faced with the reality of Jehovah, a devouring fire. Why did Israel fall into idolatry? Again, as soon as their mediator, Moses, was out of sight. Unlike Christians in the New Covenant, those under the Old Covenant had no power to obey. The law of Moses, great lamp to their feet, as it was, gave them no ability to walk. While they walked in its light, they did not stumble, but the commandment was to be written on tablets of stone for them. It only therefore had the power of fear to enforce it. Unlike the New Covenant, which was written on the hearts of those enjoying it, it has no living, life-giving power. The New Covenant, according to Paul, gives us not only light, but gives us the Lord himself. God is working in us both to will and to work, Philippians 2:13 says. Let me read that again. God is working in us both to will and to work. If you're a Jehovah's Witness, of course, you do not really believe that it is God who determines your will. You give him the right to give you more aid, to empower you, but it is your will that determines whether you will walk in his ways. Not according to Paul. God is working in us both to will and to work. But Israel was not offered the Lord himself, working within, but God on a mountain, burning with fire. And they rejected that God, that theophany. Theophany means in Greek the manifestation of God. They rejected that God, the theophany, choosing a man like themselves as mediator. So we ask you, if you are one of Jehovah's Witnesses, have you been told you must accept the mediation of an earthly organization if you want to approach God? Have you been told that only 144,000 have the privilege of a personal relationship to God? Have you been told that those who live on the new earth need not enter into the new covenant? God working within them, writing his laws on their hearts. If so, don't be surprised when you, like Israel, fall into sin, when your mediator, the organization, is not watching. Don't be deceived, John says. He who has the Son has life. He that does not have the Son does not have this life. That's 1 John 5, verse 12. In God's kingdom, as Israel found out, there is no hope outside the covenant. The terms of the law were uncompromising. You must prove yourselves holy, for I, Jehovah your God, am holy. Leviticus 19, verse 2. But how holy must we prove ourselves to be? If we're going to live by the law, that is, by our record of faithfulness to God's standards, make no mistake, God will hold us to our offer, our attempt. As Israel saw from day one at Sinai, God won't be satisfied with half measures or semi-obedience. All that Jehovah has spoken, we're willing to do, they said. But after God had finished dictating the terms of this covenant, contract with terms in contrast to the unconditional covenant with the patriarchs, Israel fell yet again. In fact, every Israelite who lived under the law died a sinner, offering sacrifices day after day, year after year, without being able to save himself from death. Jehovah's Witnesses do not live under the delusion that God plays percentages that a passing grade will do. When God says you must be holy, there are no hostages. If you choose to approach God through the law, through your own obedience, through your faithfulness, there can be only one outcome: death. Whoever observes all the law but makes a false step in one point, he has become an offender against them all, James says in James 2 verse 10. If you are a Jehovah's Witness, don't let the watchtower lay the weight of obedience on your shoulders. They say on the last page of the Live Forever book, you must be part of Jehovah's organization doing His will. If doing His will is the test, we're all doomed. We are not invited to climb a shaking mountain or to dive into a devouring fire. Instead, the Lord invites, "Come unto me, you who are heavy burdened, and I will refresh you." Our next meditation will be on the book of Numbers.